Hi, and welcome to The Working Songwriter, the show where today's best songwriters come to talk shop. I'm your host, Joe Pug. Each episode here, we host a distinguished guest, and we ask them to go deep on their inspiration, on their process, on the general ups and downs of making a life in music. So, whether you're a grizzled veteran who can now only listen to rare French drone music on a Ponos system, or else a scrappy upstart mixing your latest album on a pair of $10 earbuds you bought from a gas station, this is your show. Because ultimately, it is what every writer seeks most, an ironclad excuse to put off actually writing. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us this month. And already, I know what you're thinking. I'm late. I'm about a week late delivering today's episode. Usually we publish on the last Friday of every month, and our podcast feed has been conspicuously silent for the last few days. But I got a good excuse. As I mentioned to you in our last few episodes, I was invited to tape a live version of this show at the Newport Folk Festival. Well, that was last weekend, and I decided to wait for that opportunity before publishing our next episode. And to make up for the tardiness, in the coming weeks, I'm going to deliver not just this episode, but two more, which were taped at the festival. So that's a square deal, right? Keep your eyes peeled for those. I want to thank everyone who came out and supported the live show. And of course, I want to thank Newport Folk, Jay Sweet, Chris Capps, Britt Ryan, and everyone in the folk family for making it possible. There is a reason the festival sells out every year before the lineup is even announced. And that reason is that they've cultivated a trust with their audience. They've established a curatorship that people can rely on, and they run a smooth, no-drama operation every year. I would compare it to like when your basketball team has really good ownership, like the San Antonio Spurs or the Celtics, and you might not know who's going to be on the floor for you next year, but you just trust the franchise and the front office to get it done, and they do every year. That's Newport. I don't know how they do it year after year. I just know a good thing when I see it, and I try to appreciate it while it's there. So thank you, Newport. Okay, before we get started, just a little bit of housekeeping. If you would like to hear some of my music live in the coming months, here's where I'll be. August 17th, I'll be at the State Room in Salt Lake City. August 18th in Telluride, supporting Jamestown Revival. August 19th in Crested Butte. August 22nd in Boise. The 23rd in Missoula, Montana. August 24th in Billings, Montana. And the 25th in Bozeman at Live from the Divide. Also, we'll be announcing some more shows for September in Florida. I believe one in Sacramento as well. Doesn't look like we're going to get to Europe and the UK in the fall. Why? The touring gods have been conspiring against me, and that trip might get pushed to the winter. It's been too long since I've been across the pond in that direction, and so we're working hard to put something together ASAP. Finally, if you enjoy this podcast, if you'd like to help it remain a viable endeavor for me, there are two very quick, very painless, entirely free things that you can do to help out. And both of them are things that you can do from your smartphone. In fact, you could probably finish both of them before this interview here even starts, while I'm yapping at you right now. First, you could rate the show in the iTunes store from within your podcast app. You simply open the app, click the search button, type in The Working Songwriter, click on the reviews button for the show, click on the text that says write a review, leave one of your own. The second thing that you could do, also from your phone, is share the episode with a like-minded friend who you think might dig it. And that's just as easy and quick as the rating process. You just click the button from within your app that has a square with a little arrow coming out of the top, and that will allow you to share a link to the episode via text or email with a friend who you think might dig it. And you could also just go old school. You could mention the show to a friend. The listenership for this show has been growing since I've asked you to help me out with this, and it's entirely due to your efforts. There's no outside promotion for this show otherwise. So I'm really thankful for those of you who've taken the opportunity to do that already. And as always, the simple math on it is that it will help me out much more than it will be a pain in the ass for you. So thanks for doing that. Okay, that's all the harassment that I have for you this month. Let's get to the episode. Hey everybody, how y'all doing? All right. Wow. That's wonderful. My name is Joe Pug, and by day I'm a singer and I'm a songwriter, and that's my job. And then at night, I do this other thing, and that's the thing that we're going to do today. It's not going to be a traditional show that I might do. Traveling around as much as I did as a musician for the last 10 years, there's only so much music you can listen to when you're traveling, so I got pretty deep into podcasts. And there's this one podcast that I really wanted to hear, and I couldn't find it. And after some years of not being able to find it, I just decided to fucking make it. So why not? You only live once. So that's what this show is. It's called The Working Songwriter. I started it about a year and a half ago. It's a monthly show. The last Friday of every month, we post an interview with a songwriter whom I admire. And it's an interview with them, and it's interspersed with some historical context and stuff like that. Today's live show won't have any of that context whatsoever. I've never done a live version of this. If it's a train wreck, I'm gonna blame Jay Sweet and wash my hands of this because I can't be held responsible. So I have no idea what to expect. I don't know if it's going to be funny. I don't know if we're going to talk about songwriting. I don't know if we're going to talk about drugs. I don't know what we're going to talk about. But I'm really glad that you're here. We're going to have 3 separate interviews basically on the hour. Come and go as you please. Just be aware that at the start of every hour, I'll probably give some sort of repetition of what I just said right now. So I apologize in advance for that. And other than that, I'm glad that you're here, and let's try and do this. What do you say? Great. My guest this afternoon is the songwriter Alejandro Rose-Garcia, who performs under the name Shakey Graves. Born in 1987 in Austin, Texas, to a theatrical family, he began his career in entertainment as an actor, most notably on NBC's Friday Night Lights. He then moved to Los Angeles to pursue a career in film and TV, only to have music emerge as his true calling. In 2011, he self-released his debut album, Roll the Bones, which he gave away to listeners for free. Performing as a veritable one-man band with a guitar and Samsonite suitcase kick drum, he established a national following as an entirely independent artist. Eventually, Dual-Tone Music Group took notice and released his critically acclaimed 2014 effort, And the War Came. He's appeared on Late Night with Conan O'Brien, The Late Show with David Letterman, and Austin City Limits on PBS. In 2015, the Americana Music Association named him Best Emerging Artist. The biggest feather in his cap, though, might be that the mayor of Austin named February 9th in the city Shakey Graves Day, and he now uses that as an annual opportunity to allow listeners to pay what they want for his entire recorded catalog and gives half of the proceeds to charity. The Boston Globe has declared it makes no difference if he's alone or with backing musicians. The force is relentless. American songwriter has described his voice as equal parts agony and ecstasy. It's raw and elemental. We're very lucky to have him here with us today. We're grateful that he took the time, so please give a warm Newport welcome to Shakey Graves.
That's me. That was a great intro.
This is your life, bro.
That's my life.
So I'm going to have to imagine that growing up in Austin, Texas, there was just a few less craft cocktail bars per capita than there are now when you're growing up.
A couple, yeah.
What was Austin like when you were growing up?
When I was Austin is pretty much the same. It's always at its heart kind of a... I guess like I've always described it as when I was younger, it was kind of like the girl in your class that could run faster than you and like would beat you up, but you had a big crush on her, but she was like kind of a tomboy. And
then
tomboy. Like was into bugs and stuff. And then now she's kind of into her like having tattoos and dating like kind of douchey dudes zone, you know. And you're like, she's fine, she's cool, she's gonna figure it out. But she's in a weird phase. But it's the same person. I love the town.
Yeah,
that's pretty much the best way to describe it.
Brother, I've lived there for 7 years, and that's the best description I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's pretty on point.
Yeah.
But it's, at its heart, it's a real playful, lazy place, for better or for worse. A lot of people call it the Velvet Rut for a lot of good reasons, because it's got, not just because I'm born there, but it really does have, everything that I consider important to have in a home. It's like all my family's still there, friends, but even just the infrastructure is just like go swimming and drink margaritas and sit outside.
Lifestyle wise, we've lived down there for a while, just moved, but when people would ask me what it was like, I was like, man, it's kind of like living inside of a Whole Foods, and I like Whole Foods. But I don't think it's the real world.
Shout out to Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Whole Foods.
Well, we are a sponsor.
Give me some Kind Bars. Don't give me any more Kind Bars. Shout out to Kind Bars, though. You got your product.
Kind Bars are other sponsor. Yeah. And so you came from a theatrical family. Both your folks were in the theater?
Yeah, my mom was is an actress and a director and a playwright, and she taught acting and directing at UT.
Oh, wow.
Then my dad was a set and light designer, and they actually met in college at UT. And
wow.
So then he went on to he was like the production designer for a kind of infamous series of shows called Greater Tuna. So it was like Greater Tuna,
course.
Tuna Christmas, Red, White, and Tuna. So when I was a little kid, I grew up kind of in the bowels of the Paramount Theater and
Justin Williams.
Yeah, Jason Williams.
Yeah.
I have Joe and Jason, and it seemed fairly normal at the time, And then in looking back, it was like I have a deep affinity for gaff tape and stuff like that. I'm like black paint. I'm like, gaff tape. Arr.
Yeah.
Don't take my gaff tape, And it's like, so I've always really, I guess, aspired in any capacity to be on a production side of stuff. Not strictly performance, but I really like the run of shows and, be it like musicals or plays or TV or film or radio or anything. Like I love cables and I love production a lot.
Understanding how something's put together that it didn't show up.
How the sausage is made. Shout out to Whole Foods,
So, shout out to Whole Foods yet again. Was it a particularly musical household that you grew up into, or was that come from somewhere else?
It was. My parents were in a goofy, very 80s, 90s-ish band. My mom's going to hear this and be like, my band was goofy? Like, no, Mom.
Yeah.
But, it's like, Austin's always kind of been an everyone has a band town to a certain degree. And so, there was music in the household always, but not in a, like, learning scales kind of way.
Well, sure.
We're not terribly musical. we're wily. We're like a wily bunch of people, but we can.
But there was a guitar laying around, or there was an organ or a piano, or
there was a very bad guitar laying around. That was how I learned. My mother had bought this like turquoise sunburst Yamaha acoustic electric guitar that had like string action that was maybe 1.5 inches or 2 inches.
Maybe a cutaway in it.
It had a little single cutaway.
It had a little cutaway. Yeah,
yeah, you
gotcha.
know the one. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I my first girlfriend in middle school dumped me.
Shout out to her.
Shout out to middle school. And she went to Mexico on summer vacation and cheated on me, which I have no idea what that means when you're 13. She like kissed somebody or something.
I don't even think that far, man.
I don't know, man. It could be gruesome, but I ended up finding out through like her best friend who called me and was crying and was like, "Your girlfriend cheated on you, but you can't tell her that you know, because if you do, our friendship will be ruined forever." And I was like, I won't. This seems totally like how adults do stuff.
Yeah.
And I just like sat on it and brooded. And sat in my room and lifted like 9-pound barbells, you know? I was like, ah! And I would only listen to rap music because it didn't seem very emotional to me. Like, if anything was like, "You're hard," you know, I would just flip out. So I listened to a lot of Twista.
Yeah, sure.
Hit song called "Wobble Wobble" at the time.
Yeah, of course. How could I not know Wobble
I want to
Wobble?
see you wobble like your mama won the lotto.
Oh, that's not Wobble Baby Wobble Baby Wobble
No,
Baby Wobble?
it's
Different
like
one?
"Wobble Wobble. Let me see you shake it," which maybe was a precursor to my moniker later in life.
It could have been.
So I went and like went in the closet and dug this guitar out because she was really into guitar players. And before that, I was like, I can't play.
Yeah.
Which I think is actually the only thing that probably stops a lot of people from doing almost anything, is just deciding ahead of time that you don't do that.
I'm not that person.
Yeah, I don't do that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I will do this for vengeance, you know, for pure preteen, like, vengeance. And
I will learn the Dashboard Confessional album cover to cover.
I
for
did,
what you did.
But that was in high school. That was later in life.
Okay.
But I did definitely do that too. But yeah, that's dark days. But yeah, so she heard me hurting myself on this guitar and came in and was like, "Do you want to take lessons?" Like, you know, that's what every parent wants to hear. Music coming out of your child's room, like, "Oh my God, is he playing a guitar in there?" And be like, "Do you need any help? Do you want anything?"
Yeah.
And
are you doing something that's not playing Minecraft right now?
Great. Yeah, it's
please,
great.
let's pursue
this
that.
Is super good.
Yeah.
And so I took some lessons for a couple of months, and then just sort of went off on my own, I guess. And immediately I found that even just playing like a major chord to a minor chord, I was able to get that sort of emotional roller coaster and just do it to myself. It was like, instead of having to listen to some other song to get that feeling, I was able to like musically masturbate in my own room as a preteen. Sure. So I was like, "This is great. I can just do this all day," you know?
So do both of these all day.
It's great. Yeah, it's like you learn them at the same time. You just
go back and forth.
There. Yeah, that's perfect. Just
very symbiotic,
hands, I guess.
Very symbiotic relationship. Mm-hmm. So that I know all about.
And that's how you write songs, ladies and gentlemen. This is that's the process.
I can actually shut down this podcast now because
it's like we solved it.
We met the final boss.
The final boss.
No, but it's interesting to me because I feel like it goes two ways with people. Some people just want to learn other people's stuff at first and don't end up writing till older. But it sounds like off the break, you were pretty interested in creating your own stuff.
Yeah, I'd say like the biggest step I took was when someone gave me the ability to multi-track. Someone let me borrow like a little Korg or something digital 4-track, which had a bunch of things you could do with it, but I didn't really understand it.
Sure.
But I made these like horrible, like a little album real quick that was like, my mother loves this album. She's like, "I still have that one album of yours. I never want it." I'm like, Mom. I really don't want that around. You know, she can have it for sure. But it's like, it has a song called like Paradise on it. That's like a song about me driving off in a convertible with a girl. And I guess it's great song, I guess. Anyway, but the ability, again, in the theme of masturbation, I suppose, to just do things entirely on your own. Like singing with myself was like, I blew my mind.
Singing harmonies on the 4-track or doubling.
Absolutely. Or, I was a rudimentary, or still am a pretty rudimentary guitar player, but being able to play something simple and then spend all day trying to play something more complicated with it was like, it blew my mind.
And even if you personally don't dig that album, there's a whole there's a through line from learning the recording process, which is totally different from performing.
Yeah.
that you probably still use to this day? Because you at least self-produced Roll the Bones.
I
right?
did.
Have you self-produced the other ones as well?
Yeah, the last album I did, And the War Came, was the first one that I sort of wanted to branch out and make bigger sounds, and I didn't really know how to record, like drums. I didn't have a drum kit in my house, like that kind of stuff, where I was like, I would like this to feel bigger, which is a whole, it's like always it's just like a library that just has more and more rooms where you keep thinking you've read everything and the whole thing, and you open another room and it's like piles of books you've never seen. And,
it's a lifetime, of stuff if you want it to be.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the joy of it. I'm still finding new ways, and it's a really interesting battle to try and get over your habits, because you really used to like, for instance, with self-producing, I got really used to a certain way of doing things, but it was mainly just due to the limitations that I had. And that's kind of like the history of recorded music in a lot of ways.
Of course.
Where it's like, how did they get that sound? And it's like, well, everybody was yelling in one room because they had 4 mics and the singer's in front of the drummer, and it's just like, they have to just make sound. So that was like a lot of what I would consider my signatures of recording are all tricks that I had to learn with a terrible Audio-Technica microphone.
To kind of paper over.
Yeah, and like I don't have drums, so I'm just like slapping on my thighs and using car keys for noises. And then, later in life, looking back, I'm like, oh, this is je ne sais quoi about these things. And, and then I have fancy recording equipment, and I'm like slapping my legs and getting bags of change. And I'm like, this is stupid.
But is there a place in between, bags of change and slapping your knees and, doing the 5-day mic shootout in the studio that fucking takes every piece of soul out of the music? Like, is that what you're aiming for?
Yeah, I think that there is an absolute middle ground. And the main part of it is that at the end of the day, I really think it's important to remind yourself, and no matter what you do, that if you do something because you enjoy it, that should be the most important aspect of it. And often there's a lot of other considerations you have to, take in, but I love making. I think the best stuff that I've been able to pull off is stuff that I don't make for anybody. It's like you just are literally doing something that you're like, I'm not even sure if I'm going to show this to people.
Yeah.
And then you do, and they're like, no, this is great. And you're like, do you like my concept album about Goldilocks or whatever? And they're like, yeah, it's cool. You're like, cool. I have this other song with a convertible and a girl, if you want to hear it.
No, but even worse, because of course the album that you didn't think anyone was going to like, they find compelling. But then there's the flip side of that of like, man, this stuff that you really labor over, and you're like, and here's the coup de grace right here.
You're like, what?
You're like, yeah, it's great. It's fine.
It's cool.
It's fine.
Yeah, so having your own fingerprint, I think, is such a nice experience. But at the end of the day, I just really, if I could only write and not have to release stuff, I would probably do that. Like if someone would just pay me money to sit in my house and, wear headphones all day and just edit the same 4 minutes of WAV files, like I love getting deep in a computer where you're like, okay, and now there's on that beat goes into this thing, and you're like, what? It's too crazy.
Dragging a shaker, just one click that way and one click this way for 3 hours.
I highly recommend, if you guys have any interest in music, no matter where, to learn how to edit your own music, because it is surreal, and when it clicks together and you've imagined it, because it's about as insubstantial as anything gets. It's like it's sound, but then it's sound in a visual form.
Artists know their medium from birth. Some folks were just born to paint or to sing or to dance or to write. But those early adopters are few. The lion's share of artists I know were born communicators, and they spend their young adult life searching for their medium, searching for their way to communicate. You've got to wear a lot of hats before you find one that fits. When I left the University of North Carolina after 3 years of playwriting, one of the major catalysts was that I knew I was in the wrong medium. Another catalyst was delusions of grandeur, but we won't go there. And anyway, those can be helpful sometimes if they're sprinkled in the right place. But I knew I wanted to communicate with an audience my age, and theater wasn't a medium where that was going to happen. And it sounds like Alejandro left Los Angeles after a few years of unfruitful film auditions for a similar reason. If you want to produce a play, you need a script, a theater, a lighting designer, a costume designer, prop master, and a cast. If you want to produce a movie, you need everything just described above, plus tens of thousands of dollars in film equipment. With all these projects, you need investors and grants and timelines and patience. If you want to play music, though, you just pull up Craigslist and find the closest bar with an open mic. You can get your point across tonight, and that's appealing. Now, I know that seeing a solo performer in a bar isn't exactly like seeing the original cast of Death of a Salesman on Broadway, or watching The Master in Technicolor with surround sound, but if you really learn your craft and get the right audience, you can get pretty damn close on a good night. I don't know any other medium, besides maybe stand-up comedy, that puts so much agency in the artist's hands so quickly. There's nothing there to stop you but yourself. I want to step back a little bit and talk about your move to Los Angeles, which was that was originally intended to be more of a move for an acting career.
Yeah,
correct?
100%.
And so where did the left turn happen to music?
Well, so, I mean, I'd always acted just in theater and stuff, and at a certain point, my mom's like, you can, like, if you want to. I obviously have talked about my mom a lot so far, but she's been she's been very helpful in being man. You can do stuff you like as a job. She's a director for a living. Yeah, I mean, how many people in the world are theater directors? Exactly.
For a living? Like, 1,000.
We are a very magic beans family, where I'm like, I'm not sure how we pay rent, but we do.
But we do.
And there's food, and we weren't rich or poor or anything. We just kind of we have survived on art to a certain degree.
I've always felt that you can't make money playing art, but you can make a living playing art. You definitely can make a living,
And that's a very sweet spot, I think. I feel like, as, that beautiful intro you gave me with accolades or whatever, but the first time that some total stranger saw what I saw in my own music, and if not more, that was like, I'm good. That's nailed it. That feels great.
Let's do this over and over and over.
Yeah, let's keep doing this. And but so I took acting seriously, and instead of going to college for it, she was a college professor, and she's like, unless you want to do theater specifically,
right.
You should just jump in. You should just start working in film if that's what you want to do.
100%.
Go into the talent. And I think that applies to a lot of stuff. Is if you want to play music, go play music. Go fight your way into a club and be like, I have a guitar, and do it. And so we packed up when I was. I first went out there when I was 18, 19, something like that.
Yeah.
And then ended up just battling with LA off and on for about 5 years. And it's a feisty city. I love Los Angeles, and it's taught me, more lessons than I even care to talk about.
Sure.
It was like, I'm a real city. It made Austin look like on a video game, that area that you start in where you're like, oh, cool. And nothing really can hurt you very much. And then you go out and it's like, just pounding.
No, man, it's a true metropolis. There's only 5 true metropolises in the U.S. It's like New York, Chicago, L.A.
And they're all huge, vastly different personalities.
They are, but you're right, they're real. That's a real damn city that does not give a fuck about you.
No, you can super die. You can super duper die.
Yes,
I'm going to die.
Yeah.
I'm going to get murdered, for real murdered, though.
No, really.
For real.
Out of college, I moved to Chicago, and I lived there for a while, and I worked there for a long time. The first time I ever played Austin, these fans after the show, they were like, hey, do you need a place to crash tonight? And I was like, yeah, please. So we're driving back to their place, and they were like, hey, do you want to go to the worst intersection in Austin? And I was living in Chicago at the time, and I was like, no! I don't want to go to the worst intersection. It was like
midnight. Want to take you to 12th and Chacon?
12th and Chacon! And I'm like, man.
12th and Chacon.
Yeah, man. I would let to talk about my mom now, I would let my mom walk at 12th and Chacon at midnight any day of the week.
Totally.
Whereas Chicago was just really like, you'd end up in some parts of it that you would super die if you ended up in that place.
Like really fast.
Like really fast. Yeah.
Yeah, LA's scary in that sense where you can't, there's certain areas that you're like, this is spooky.
Yeah.
But then there's certain areas where it's like, nice street, death street, nice street, nice street, death street, half, and nice street, half.
The
and
kind
you're
of
like,
street,
what?
When you walk down it, like people start like kind of like slowly walking out of their houses towards you.
Yeah, they come out into the street.
Yeah.
Like I've ridden my bike down the street and people come out like, hey, hey, hey. And you're like, no,
just passing through, hombre.
No.
So when did the left turn towards music begin to happen?
So, I mean, that was really, so it's this stupid battle of like, if you want to go be an actor, it's, the odds that lightning will strike immediately are very low. And you have to put in your time too. Even if you destroy an audition, there's usually 2 or 3 people ahead of you that have been doing this for 5 years.
Right.
That, it's like, it is a waiting game. And usually, even if you match something perfectly, the odds are that there's somebody else who's been matching something perfectly, but has been there for 3 years longer, that they're like, well, Bill over here has been sitting in this room 4 times as long as you, so Bill's going to get it today. And in 5 years, you'll get a job. And you're like, that's great in 5 years.
But
And I really started to have like an existential crisis about what I was doing, because acting is at its heart, it's an incredibly fun way to like journey through your psyche and body and try and, take past memories and experiences and make them visible and re-experience. It's like, it's an art. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to do, and it's really exciting and tough. But to even get to be in the game, it's like the audition process is so crazy. It's literally like walking into rooms full of handsome, gorgeous versions of yourself that have like clean clothes and stuff, and you're like, oh my God. And they're like cracking walnuts with their arms.
Yeah.
And it's like you're going out for hunk boyfriend, and they're like, well, you're the weird option. We have the weird option.
Yeah.
Like this dude is freaky hot, but he can't talk very good. But you talk kind of well.
Yeah.
And so we'll put you over here next to him, and the producers will, pretend to choose. And, but so all of that was just this like wild psychedelic experience to go through with open eyes. And so I felt like I really had a lot to write about for the first time. Like, not about Girl in Convertible, but about like who am I, and this constant nagging urge that I had in the back of my head to like tear all my clothes off and run screaming down the highway and be like, I'll never come back here, you fucking crazy ass play, I will never do this. Like, script up ass, go away, I don't like this.
Yeah. It kind of you get to say to yourself like, no. I'm going to say who I am. You're not going to say who I am.
And so in that time, it was like, and I had a lot of downtime, because the other trick is like, if you get a day job and you work at a cafe or whatever, and you suddenly get the audition of your life, no one cares. No one's going to be like, oh, you go chase that dream. Like, we got you. We're going to find another busboy for one day. We'll totally give you this job back.
Right.
It's like, doesn't happen. So you have to sort of like starve yourself, make yourself available all the time, and
for nothing to happen.
Yeah, so in that time, to not go crazy, I really got into recording a lot. And that's when I made the majority of that first album, and a lot of the stuff that I still, play to this day.
Wow. It just rewards you in spades for years to come, doesn't it? Like
and then I mean, it took years for me to actually choose to do something, because it's like, they're both crazy ideas. To be like, I'm going to stop being an imaginary person, and I'm gonna be like a fantasy person instead. I'm like, I'm gonna be a spaceman, not a pirate. And you're like, okay, I guess. Good luck.
But obviously, there had to be a certain turning point where people were responding to what you were doing. So you kind of would say to yourself, like, oh, well, people aren't responding to my auditions in this way right now. And what was that point for you?
It came down to, in all honesty, it came down to me being essentially homeless, where all my stuff was in my car, and I was dating a girl simply to have a house to stay in. And she sort of knew it too. But she was like, but I like you. And I was like, I like you too.
Yeah.
And she was like, this is horrible. And I was like, I know. I want to go to bed.
Just give me a minute.
Like,
just give me a minute.
You have to have sex with me first. I was like, oh, okay. This is horrible. So I was a prostitute.
Yeah.
And And then I caught myself taking a nap in a grocery store parking lot just so I didn't have to go hang out with this person. Be like, wow. And I was like, this is so dark.
Yeah.
This is super duper dark.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't have to pack anything because all my stuff's in my gross car.
I'm out.
And I was like, I'm gone.
Yeah.
I went home and was like, it happened. I'm leaving. She's like, damn it.
Yeah.
God, all right, go away. And I was like, okay. And I drove home and like made a 5-year plan and was like, in 5 years, I'm going to be like, this year is going to be playing in bad bars and learning what I'm doing. Next year, I'm going to be playing in slightly better bars. The year after that, I'm going to take it kind of on the road. Year after that, I'll put out a big album, and then the year after that, I'll be playing festivals. And that's what happened.
Hell yeah.
And it worked out almost exactly like that and took exactly that much work. Like I went home and, just thought about it like, no one cared. I mean, they knew me as Alejandro, but really had no association with me playing music whatsoever.
Right.
So it was pretty much a clean slate. And since I chose like a moniker, because that was another thing, is I was really tired of having my name be what I was selling, which is a crazy part of acting,
one of my
but
big
also
regrets.
music. Like,
yeah. If I could go back, I definitely would have played under a moniker or a band name. I think it makes a huge difference on a lot of levels. But on a personal one, like you're talking about there, I'm not selling me right now.
Yeah.
This is a different thing.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's tough to differentiate that in your brain too. It's like, I'm sure even for you, like where you're like, well, this is my music.
Yeah.
And then it's still like, but is this Joe Pug? Am I Joe Pug?
Yeah.
Who am I? What is this? And it's like, that's easy to go through no matter what you're doing, even if you have a band or no matter what. But if it's your name that you're putting out there. Yeah. And I just wanted people to be able to hear stuff without like, this is Ollie's song that he made in his house. I'm like, no, this is this mysterious group that I found
it's a new thing.
in a basement. The cool people. Just kidding, it's me.
But that 5-year plan that you're talking about, though, that's really what I love about the art of music is like, if you see this needle that you can thread and you know exactly how you're going to do it, there's a bar down the street that you can go down and start step one right now. And that's the exact opposite of the experience you were talking about in Los Angeles.
Oh, it's just 100%.
You had 0 control in that one, and you have 100% control in this other one.
Well, and a lot of people, this took me years to even like process in my brain, where even the idea of acting versus music, where usually they get tied together for some bizarre reason, where people are like, yeah, music actor.
Of course, right. Yeah.
Actor, music guy. And you're like, well, okay, because usually the ideal like musician is someone who is so much like themselves in front of everybody else. They're like being open or vulnerable or expressing something deep that they do. And the point of being an actor is to literally not be yourself as good as you possibly can. Like, wow, you really didn't seem like yourself. Yeah, that was amazing.
Yes.
And so they have like absolutely nothing to do with each other. And unless you write your own material and this and that, the odds that you're expressing something that's deeply meaningful to you, it's like very low.
It is.
And it just never dawned on me until like 15 minutes ago or whatever. And I was like, oh, these are different. Yeah. But for real, it was a huge, important, and it like playing your own music is very empowering. And I also forget that it's not a new thing, but I've still had tons of people ask, especially when I started, where they're like, what do you do? And I started to be like, well, I play music. And they're like, you play your own songs? And I was like, yeah. And it just hadn't dawned on me that a lot of people in a lot of towns, I mean, Austin, thank God, is a place that understands original music. But if you're in Amarillo, there's some dude at a bar is probably not going to want to hear your...
Of course not. I mean, you talk to, song. I mean, at least in my extended family, anyone I talk to an extended family, they're just like, well, you've been at it for a while, Joe. It's time to try American Idol. And you're like,
right, yeah.
You don't understand. God, like, you don't, like, and they're trying to be helpful, and God bless them.
Oh, but, I know.
But in their world, it's like you're either playing Everclear covers down at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Shout out to Everclear and Buffalo Wild Wings. Love both of you. This is awesome.
We had a lot of sponsors for this podcast.
I love you. Sorry.
Or you're going that route. And yeah, you're right. It is, in a strange way, it is kind of a boutique thing in the scheme of things that you could make a living writing your own songs. People will come out to hear them.
It means, I mean, the audience member is as inclusive of it's a real-time participant in music. And, it's like, it's nice that acting, I mean, I'm a movie nut job. I try and see everything that I can. I love wasting time in movies. I like prefer to just watch movies forever. Yeah,
okay.
I love movies. But that doesn't usually affect the movie that I'm watching in real time. You know what I mean? I can sit there and be like, watched 9 episodes of whatever, The Bachelor, and they like aren't being affected by how I feel about this,
In the moment.
Yeah.
Well, and that's live stuff. And I think we have some stuff in our reptile brain that really responds to in-the-moment interaction. We've been doing it for thousands of years.
Well, and that's theater is such a nice thing to do. It's probably the most thankless of this.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't go see theater, and I love it, and I still get bored during plays, but being able to learn a whole script full of things and then going out on stage and being like blah, 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 and just barfing words out, like 2 hours of talking that you're like, that's and walking around and remembering all these factors. It's like your brain. Yeah, it's a wild experience. I recommend everybody goes and does a play at some point.
And it's a very impermanent experience. I mean, you think about the fact that your mom is a professional theater director. She has poured her heart and her soul into all these different productions. Well, they don't exist now. They only exist while they're up. And you can take a video of it, whatever. Taking a video of a stage play completely defeats the entire point of it. So I'm kind of wondering, like, in this world where we can archive everything right now, where I have a phone in my pocket, where I can listen to any song that's ever been recorded, I'm kind of wondering if that will become valuable again. Something that's impermanent and happened once, and you were either there or you weren't,
I mean, I guess it's an accidental, partial laziness plus, like, good idea thing that I've done where my songs change as I change. It's like very few tunes that I play sound the same way, even night to night. And I play them differently room to room. And it's sometimes just because that's what I feel like doing and everybody else can suck it. I'm like, I'm tired today, so you're going to hear a very tired version of this song. And sometimes it sounds like a love song, but today it's not going to sound like a love song. It's going to sound like a mean, grumpy song.
Yeah.
And I think that's like my right as a musician, whatever. I think that's I love when musicians do that. And I guess I like both. I love polished. I love going to concerts and being like, nailed it. That's exactly the song I like. Sure. And I also love like weird, I used to always like seek out acoustic covers and be like, oh, an acoustic cover. This is my jam. Yeah. But now I don't do that.
Founded in 1959 by concert promoter George Wein, the Newport Folk Festival is a cultural institution. In an era where every article written about the music industry is a eulogy, a brief stroll through Fort Adams State Park during Folk Fest will disabuse you of any notion that there isn't an audience for beautiful, challenging, powerful art. In fact, there's a rather large one, and they're rabid for it. The festival originally came to prominence with programming that featured folk legends such as Pete Seeger, Joan Baez, and Bob Gibson. In the 1960s, it provided a venue to Johnny Cash, Muddy Waters, and Jose Feliciano. And in 1965, it provided a dramatic backdrop for the career-defining moment of its favorite son, Bob Dylan. Taking the stage with members of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band, Dylan strapped on an electric guitar to the horror of staid folk purists. Today, we take it for granted that artists will defy our expectations. Sinead O'Connor ripping up a picture of the Pope, Radiohead ditching their guitars for a digital sampler, and yes, tragically, Kanye showing up in the lobby of Trump Tower. But if you're searching for when the archetype of the unpredictable artist began in our modern imagination, a strong case could be made for Dylan going electric. And it happened in Newport. Since then, the festival has undergone a number of permutations, and I think it's fair to say that just in the last decade, it's experienced a rebirth of cultural relevance. After we taped the show on Saturday afternoon, I wandered over to the hospitality tent to crack a beer, and looking around, I noticed just as many artists backstage who were not playing the festival as I did those who were. People were just there to hang, to sit in on someone else's set, to support their friends, to take a load off between tours. With the amount of idle talent backstage, I believe you could probably have put together an entirely different lineup that would have given the actual lineup a run for its money. I've known Alejandro's music for years now, but it was Newport that brought us together to have this conversation, and that's no accident. Newport exists to make those moments possible. I'm not sure how scenes like that begin. I'm not sure how they develop. I'm not sure how they stay together, but I know enough to appreciate it when I see it, because it's rare. So if you're sitting down these days, if you have a day to write, what does that day look like? It looks like you're pretty hands-on. You'd probably be writing in the studio, wouldn't you?
I do. I finally have like my dream. I have like a little room. Finally.
Yeah, a rig.
It's like,
and
I got a room. And I got really into, I used to edit all my music on this super outdated piece of software that was like a ripped version of, it was called Cool Edit Pro. And it was like, it later became Adobe Audition, I guess, but someone had totally...
I didn't even know about that.
Oh, someone had totally snatched it off Napster or something and given it to me like, hey, here you go. Yeah. And I learned this terrible software and then became totally dependent on it because it was the only way I knew how to edit music. And then when my computer died and technology advanced past 1995 or whatever, it no longer was possible for me to use this software. And then I had this huge gap where I literally couldn't do what I wanted to do. I couldn't pull off.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, like the gap between my imagination and my piece, it became huge.
Right.
And I guess for better or for worse, that was really when I just was playing live more. So that became the focus.
Sure.
But it's like now I've forced myself to learn Pro Tools and also have like a big tape. So I used to do a bunch on a little Tascam, the blue Tascam cassette. And I recently got like its older brother, the big 388, which is like a 1/4-inch big brown tape machine.
Is it a Tascam?
Yeah.
Still?
It's a big 1/4-inch Tascam.
Yeah.
And it's like, it feels so good, and it's kind of stupid sometimes, I'll record other people's songs and be like, great, it sounds great. No, the tape broke or whatever. They're like, why don't you have a computer? And I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
But now it's like, I finally, like, I have a drum kit. I have a bass, I'm like, well, I have a bass? I used to just have to EQ an acoustic guitar, like, through the ceiling and DI it and all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
And so now it's like I'm in this exploratory realm where I can start with a drum track or I can start doing this, and I'm really into like trying to produce other people's stuff now, which is a it's a big challenge, but it's something I'm like, I would totally love to try and do a song.
How is that different for you than doing your own stuff?
It's different mentally because you have to be very you have to be sure of yourself as you're doing it. Because if you bring somebody in and you're like, I'm going to do this for you, and then you're like, what do you think? Should we use this? Do you think this microphone would be good? Or like, do you want to use that? They're like, I could have done this at my house. Like, I could have just asked myself all these questions. Right. So if you come in and you're like, let's do this really fascinating. Let's come over here. We'll do this part on the tape machine. We'll slow it down, make the drums richer for some weird reason. We'll play it faster. Then we'll put that in the computer. Then we'll throw the computer in the ocean, and then we'll have a good song,
Indeed. So, and it sounds like it's never like a deal where you're like, well, I got an album I want to put out, so I want to sit down and write. This just sounds like if you have time off at home, you're just in that room doing that.
I'd prefer to.
Pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, like, when I have time off, I take time off. Like, I sit around, I draw, I do model airplanes. It's like, I'm like a old, very young boy. Like, old man, young boy, kind of smooshed together.
Nothing in between.
No, there's not that middle zone. And, but I mean, like, a perfect day, I really got in the zone like 2 weeks ago, and I would wake up and make coffee and just go in a room and work on music for like 9 hours.
Yeah.
And something like right now I feel really lucky because I have a ton of friends and fellow musicians, like a lot of which are at this festival.
I know, and only half of them are playing.
I know. Yeah, everyone's around here like, hey man, you a wristband too? This is crazy.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, this is great. Yeah, what's up?
Totally.
And but like last night, we sat around, me and a bunch of people sat around and just played songs. And something I used to do a lot more of was just sit around and write on an acoustic guitar. And now I don't do that a lot. And it's something that is like, in the big oscillating wheel of time, things come up and become more pertinent and less important over and over again. And I feel like for me right now, the thing that I'm having to remind myself is that it is important to be able to play just a song to somebody. That if someone's like, hey man, what are you working on? I'm like, okay, sit down in this one part of the room. I'm going to put this on, but you have to, if you move, the speakers won't sound right and whatever. And it's like, instead, I would just love to be able to blast it out and be like, oh, here, I have this tune for you.
I've been caught a couple times with my pants down, being in a mode like what you're talking about.
It does feel like pants down. Like, well, play it for me. Like,
dude, you spent so much time on your computer, you're mixing this, you're doing that, you use this piece of software. It's a great groove, this, that, and the other. And then you go meet with some friends, there's a guitar there, and they're like, what have you been working on? You have nothing to show for it.
Nothing.
And you realize that maybe it isn't a song. At the same time, I've written the shit out of some songs before I had the ability to capture and record it. And I think that those were really hindered by that too. So it can be somewhere in between.
Yeah, there's not a right way, but I definitely, last night, I wish I had that song,
Here's a beginning, middle, and end. What do you think about this? Yeah, with a nice melody to it.
Yeah, I would like that. And I would like people to be like, oh, interesting, you should change that part around. And instead, I don't have that right now. But then maybe that's what I'll write a song about. I'll be like, hey,
please don't write a song about that.
Joe Pug told me not to write a song about this. Please. It's gonna be dope.
Please God, don't do that. Do you feel now that you have a platform and an audience? Do you ever feel different about what you'd like to put out, or like a message that you'd like to get across, or is it really just between you and the canvas all the time?
I feel like, luckily enough, I kind of set myself up in a fairly open-ended way. Like the way that I started playing music wasn't like a country project. It wasn't really indie. Me. It sounded kind of like me, sort of from the get-go. So I think I have flexibility within that. But that being said, I really like intentional work, which I'm not always the best at. But I'm really into having another band, or as opposed to trying to cram everything into one project. I feel like all the bands that I used to admire always had side bands, and there was always some cool option where you're like, oh, but have you heard their weird thrash reggae band or whatever? And it's like, yeah, dude, that's that's the stuff. And you're like, yeah, that I love that, and I aspire for that sort of. I don't know, those sort of balls sometimes, it's like, because you do become, or I become very codependent with the music that I put out, because I've played it for years and I feel like I know what I'm doing, kind of. Yeah. But it's like, it can be a scary thing to try and step into a new
It's really hard to step away from, you have an audience waiting in a room, they're hyped, right? You have a show in this pocket that will destroy this audience and be great. How the fuck do you not do that show when you have this other show in your pocket? It's really, really tough to not just pull out, boom, trump card right here. How do you like this?
And at the end of the day, it's like the answer has already been made, which is like, if you're not brave enough to do it, then that's stupid, because you should. Like, if you want to do I don't think either of us got anywhere by like sitting around and being like, gonna steal all your money and like write all these songs and then just live like this for the rest of my life. It's like, I'm curious about a lot, and and I Shakey Graves, whatever that is, was like whatever this imaginary project is I'm dreaming up. Now, it was like this 7 years ago, so it might take time, but I'm into it, and I feel like I have so much to learn. I really just have like endless amounts of.
That's the fun place to be in.
Things to learn,
isn't it?
Yeah, I have to learn so much. Oh my God.
That's a good place to leave it, brother. Thanks so much for sitting down, man.
Yeah, dude.
Appreciate it.
We all have so much to learn. Go read books.
Shakey Graves, ladies and gentlemen. That's our show for this month. Thank you for listening. Shaky's latest album is And the War Came, available everywhere digital music is sold or streamed. Today's episode was engineered and mixed by Matt Schusler. Research and editorial direction provided by the intrepid and thorough Paul Barbagallo. Production wrangling by Don Bartlett. If before we meet again, you sit down to write, please remember, an expensive drug habit is not a song, a compelling Instagram account is not a song, and most importantly, reverb is not a song. So let all that take care of itself, and for you, just keep your eye on the song.